What's up, everybody? Josh Armijo here. I hope everybody's doing good and well and stuff. I got an album review to do for you, and I'm going to be talking to you about the debut album from the band Sweven, entitled The Eternal Resonance. This is released on Van Records. Now, if you're not too familiar with this band, they are based out of Stockholm, Sweden, and the best way to describe the sound of this band would be a very traditional, elaborate, progressive style of death metal. Sweven is primarily the creation of vocalist, guitarist, and songwriter Robert Andersson. You may probably know him best for his involvement with probably one of the most critically acclaimed and most well-known newer Swedish death metal bands to come out of the 2010s with Morbus Chron. Morbus Chron was a really one-of-a-kind project, and they put out a really awesome series of EP releases and memorable full-lengths, from 2011's Sleepers in the Rift, to the EP release, A Saunter Through the Shroud, to the last album that Morbus Chron ever did in 2014 with Sweven, which is, of course, where this new band gets the name from. You could tell with the Sweven album that the band was taking a big direction change from straightforward death metal to a more progressive, sombering sort of sound. And Sweven really was a big eye-opener for a lot of people, and that was a really, really awesome full-length album. But now that Morbus Chron has since pretty much disbanded and bit the dust, we now have this new project of Sweven, with Robert Andersson doing guitars and vocals, and with some other accomplices and friends helping him out with extra guitar and drum work. And now we have what is pretty much the next step in evolution of Robert Andersson's work in the form of Sweven, with this debut full-length album entitled The Eternal Resonance. It's 8 tracks, and it clocks in at around an hour in length, so pretty much once you go into listening to this album, there's really no going back, because you already know you're going to be in for a very intriguing sort of thrill ride. Listening to this album, you can definitely tell that in parts and moments that this is a death metal album, but there are moments on this album that really makes it feel like you're not listening to a death metal album. You're listening to a more progressive, rock, hard music sort of ideas going on here with this album, and it's just really, really crazy. This is just something you're going to really need to have multiple listens to fully grasp and understand what you're getting yourself into here with this album. But once you do get comfortable with something like the Eternal Resonance, you'll grow to appreciate what is being done here with this album, and it just makes for some absolutely captivating and stunning music. If you were a fan of the direction Morbus Chron were taking on the Sweven album, then I really think you're going to love and appreciate what's going on here with the Eternal Resonance. This is just some seriously top-notch musicianship going on here. And what makes this album so top-notch is the fact that these guys, especially Robert Andersson, know exactly what they're doing when it comes to playing the music and creating these really in-depth, detailed sorts of guitar riffs that are being played throughout this entire album. Once you get on to some of the more lengthier, meatier tracks of this album, like By Virtue of a Promise and The Sole Importance, and even the closing track of Sanctum Sanctorum, you can already tell that this is some pretty high-end virtuoso style material going on here. The riffs, the chord progressions, the elaborate technicality of things, it just makes for an altogether intriguing listen, and that's what makes these guitars sound so good. This is a very guitar-dominant and guitar-heavy sort of album, and you hear that throughout the majority of this full-length album, throughout all of these lengthy, long, methodical tracks. It really doesn't feel like a dull moment, especially once things begin to verge into more metal sort of territory, and then later on when things begin to slow down to more calming, progressive sorts of moods. It just really does sound awesome. The drumming on this album feels very awesome too. I love the pacing of everything. I love the natural vibes. I love the stamina and endurance. Once again, reverting to the lengthy songs that appear on this album. Once again, going back to By Virtue of a Promise, which is a really, really awesome song. And then the track Solemn Retreat. Just some really top-notch drumming going on here. Great drum fills, great drum patterns. This is really an album devoid of blast beats or any sort of death metal pomp and circumstance. But this drum performance, what it lacks in blast beats, it absolutely makes up for with intelligence and grace. And this drum performance is really awesome to listen to here. And another aspect about the Eternal Resonance I really enjoyed a lot was the use of piano keys. The piano work, keyboard work, whatever was used for this album, it really does make a huge difference, especially for the first half of this album with songs like Reduced to an Ember and The Soul Importance. Just hearing the piano go alongside the drumming and the riffs that are being played throughout this album is just really something captivating and special to listen to. And it adds another layer of depth and emotion to this overall album's presentation and performance. And when it comes to the vocals, I like Robert's vocal style going on here. It's very much what you know and would expect out of his vocal style. Very high-end sort of screams and rasps, a lot of conviction, a lot of passion in his voice, and he really does show how strong of a vocalist he can be, especially throughout the later parts of this album. I mean, going to songs once again like By Virtue of a Promise or Mycelia or Visceral Blight, you just get a lot of really great vocal work going on from his end, and especially when it comes to the final track of Sanctum Sanctorum, you get a lot of the harsh vocals being done here, but as the song and album comes to an end, you get this really nice clean sung chant style vocal at the very end, which I think is a really nice way to close the album out here. You're thinking when you're listening to something like this, you would expect a lot of clean vocals to show up here, but I don't hear a lot of it except for the very end. Maybe the use of, maybe a little bit more clean singing for the next time around would be really cool, but other than that, the main vocals by Robert here are very, very awesome. So overall, this album's quite a lot to take in, but once you get comfortable with it, I think you'll really appreciate what's being done here. If you're a fan of Morbus Chron, if you're a fan of the direction they were taking with their final album, you'll like this next step in direction for what Sweven are doing here with the Eternal Resonance. This is a very, very strong and solid album. Probably won't be for everybody, but for everybody that is into elaborate and progressive extreme music, Sweven are delivering something very nice here with the Eternal Resonance. So, if I had to think of any personal favorite tracks, I would definitely have to say By Virtue of a Promise, Reduced to an Ember, Mycelia, and Sanctum Sanctorum. Absolutely great closing track here. So, what I'm going to do is I'll leave you some links in the description box as to how you can get a hold of this album and listen to it. I will leave you a link to the Van Records Bandcamp page where you can listen to this album in its entirety, hear it for yourself, and be your own judge as to whether you think it's worthy of being purchased or not. You can stream it digitally and it's available physically as a CD and double LP. You can get it through Van Records, or you can keep an eye out for U.S. distribution. I'm pretty sure 20 Bucks Spin and Dark Descent are handling that. But anyways, just keep your eye and ear out for that in case you want to get a hold of this album physically. So, again, the album is The Eternal Resonance by Sweven. This is released on Van Records. Definitely check this one out. And for a score, for the time being, I'm going to give this a very strong 8.5 out of 10. Very solid debut and solid direction for anybody that's into Morbus Chron's last album or the direction that they're going to be going forward here in the future. So, if you guys happen to have heard this album, definitely let me know what you think about it and how you feel about it, or any of you guys into Sweven, definitely let me know. I'm going to conclude this review. Thanks a lot for watching. Thanks for checking out my channel. Until the next time, Armijo out.